Okay, hello. We're going to continue this conversation about television here now and get into the historical aspect of television. Of course, we've already talked somewhat about the fact that the telegraph, the telephone, movies, and certainly radio preceded television as forms of electronic communication. Radio, in particular, directly led to television. We're going to talk about the invention of television. Here you see that icon here of the radio news. This is a magazine about radio, probably in the 20s or 30s. And you see the headline there says soon. And the gentleman sitting in his easy chair and watching television, which would have been in the future at that point. But indeed, it did come soon. And these three people that are depicted here are, in one way or another, considered inventors of television. John Logie Baird, the gentleman here in the upper right, was a Scotsman who invented a system of mechanical television that did work, but it was not very practical. And then these other fellows, this is Philo Farnsworth here in the upper left, and this is Vladimir Zworykin to the right. They developed an electronic system of television, which is the system of television that everyone was familiar with from 1940s into really the 21st century. But they were not partners; they were competitors, and we'll talk about them. But early TV development, those three are considered the inventors of television, but really in particular Farnsworth and Zworykin. So I have a nice video on this, and I wish we could watch all of it, but we can't. I'm going to pick it up part of the way in, and we'll pick it up with Philo Farnsworth's image or vision of television.
But even as Baird's idea failed, a new electronic vision was being born.
The summer of 1921 found Philo T. Farnsworth in a sugar beet field in Rigby, Idaho, dreaming of trapping light in an empty jar and sending it one line at a time with a beam of electrons. So we'll pretend that we've got an illustration here of Farnsworth's beet field from the summer of 1921. And we find him tracing the rows across the beet field on his disc harrow, one row after another, monotonously into the afternoon. And then he reaches a point, and he looks back behind him, and he sees these rows in the dirt. And at that moment, he realizes how he can use electrons to trace a TV image. And this is exactly how TV is rendered on your screen today, one line at a time, 525 lines per frame, 30 frames per second, just the way Philo Farnsworth envisioned it on the back of a disc harrow in the summer of 1921.
What 14-year-old Farnsworth realized with his tractor was that a beam of electrons could paint a picture finer and faster than a spinning disc. And it could be done with a cathode ray tube.
A cathode ray tube is a glass tube with all the air pumped out of it. So it was discovered that if you ran electricity through one end, through a filament at one end of this vacuum tube, that electrons would flow from one end to the other. And that's when you have a cathode ray tube. That's called the cathode ray, a ray of electrons.
Farnsworth's electronic television worked on the same principle as mechanical television, but instead of spinning discs, it used cathode ray tubes. The cathode ray tube fired electricity 1 pixel at a time, causing a special coating on the tube to glow. A lot of electricity created a bright spot. A little electricity, a dark spot. The cathode ray tube could paint a picture in 1/30th of a second, fast enough to create fluid motion. In 1926, with $25,000 in private funding, Farnsworth set up a lab in San Francisco to try to turn his beet field vision into reality.
Okay, I'm going to pause it at that point, and at this point, it also gets into the involvement of Vladimir Zworykin in the invention of television. Again, Zworykin and Farnsworth were competitors, very much so. They fought each other in the courts over the patent to television. And I won't get into the legal battle over that, but from our point of view, Farnsworth and Zworykin are more or less today considered the co-inventors of television, even though they certainly were not partners. They were anything but partners. By 1939, television from the technical point of view was ready to go. And we used to have something called the World's Fair, which would be held in a different city every year. And in New York, the World's Fair was held in New York in 1939, and television was introduced there and was basically ready to be put out to the public. This is a video from the Smithsonian Institution, the big museum in Washington, D.C., and we'll look at some of this.
Hey guys, my name is...
I found Lovey and Laura on their way to the museum's entertainment collection.
Do you guys have a couple of minutes? Would you like to come with me and see some cool stuff?
For sure.
All right, come this way. Let's see what we can
They're
find.
game for a slight detour.
All right, you guys, here's our elevator. This is going to take us to where we need to go.
It's a big
I know it is
elevator.
big. Well, a lot of different artifacts and things have to come on here. I know it might seem a little scary, but it is okay.
It is a bit scary.
Like most of us, Laura and Lovey grew up watching a lot of TV. I'm taking them backstage to see how it all started.
So are there artifacts in these cabinets?
Some of them have artifacts, some of them are just paperwork.
That's really cool.
I'm going to take you guys to see one of the curators.
Hey, good afternoon. We have a goodie here. And what you think we got?
I'm not sure.
It kind of looks like a
Jukebox, yeah.
Actually, what we've got here is a television.
Oh my gosh.
It's as big as a jukebox because it contains a 25-inch long cathode ray tube. The picture appeared on the top surface of the cabinet and was reflected into the mirror. This RCA TRK-12 was one of the first models ever sold.
1939. Television is ready to make its official public debut. The setting could hardly be more perfect. The New York World's Fair.
The TRK-12's debut launched NBC's scheduled programming and an industry that would transform the world.
The ultimate triumph in man's search for sight beyond the range of the human eye.
How was it received at the World Fair? Were people really excited about
Oh
it?
yeah, people were looking at this and going, wow, this is cool. This is the future.
On the dial here, there's television, radio, and then it says, is it
Victrola.
Victrola? What's that?
You could hook this into a record player.
I'm really surprised at how multitasking it was even, like so long ago. The iPad mini still amazes me, but at the time, I can imagine that this would have been just equally as earth-shattering.
Skeptics dismissed television. Daryl Zanuck, head of the 20th Century Fox movie studio, said people would get tired of staring at a plywood box every night. Boy, did he get it wrong.
Ah, there we go.
How many were there at the time that this was around?
There's a little less than 2,000 of them made.
I can't imagine there were too many programs on then, though.
No, and in fact, they do have the markings here. You have 5 channels to choose from.
So I will pause it there. So yeah, 5 channels really would have been a lot in New York. Would be probably the only city in the country at that time with 5 television channels. So you actually had television stations going on the air by 1939, but the war comes along, World War II, and further development of television really was stopped because all of the efforts, all of the industrial capacity of the nation went into World War II, and television was put on hold until the war was over. The war ended in 1945. And then 1948 is the year that's sort of considered the year that television became part of everyday life in America. The TV audience in 1948, after World War II, grew by 4,000%, and that is when television really started to make a major impact. The UHF band and the VHF band, I don't want to make too much of this. I mainly am showing you this to demonstrate the idea of broadcast TV. Originally there were only channels from 2 to 13. That's 12 channels inclusive, not 13, but since there was no channel 1 for whatever reason. But these were the original channels. And so in Dallas-Fort Worth, the oldest channels are 4, 5, 8, 11, and 13, because they are the original channels. And those were the only channels from 2 to 13 that existed at that time. And then later the UHF band, the ultra-high frequency band, was created, and then you had the channels, everything above 13 that came along. This is how the channels on the local market came to be. Today, there really is no VHF or UHF. We have digital television, which we'll talk about eventually, and that did away with VHF and UHF channels. The channels themselves still exist, but as digital channels. But I wanted to bring this up to say that broadcast TV still today goes out over the airwaves and is received by an antenna. Now, you may receive television from on a cable. You may receive it by satellite. Certainly there is streaming television. You can even get local TV streaming with some apps now. But if you have an antenna, then it is free. And you're able to pluck these signals out of the air. So this is a video I wanted to show you. And this is purely just a home video made by an individual, and he was proud of his television antenna that he had installed. As you see the slide there, no more cable bill. So he's demonstrating how his broadcast TV antenna works.
Everyone, welcome to my video about my TV antenna. That's my antenna up there. It's about 6 years old. It's 12 foot long. Got tired of paying a cable bill, so I put an antenna up. It is 12 foot long. It's the biggest one I could find. I'm about 50 miles south of the major city here, and I get really good reception, about 60 channels, probably 10 or 15 are HD. The antenna works real well, pay for itself the first month.
So I'll pause that there, but he has installed this antenna on a tower or on a pole that extends up. You can see how far above the roof line. So what's that, 25 or 30 feet maybe? And the antenna sits on top of this pole, and it's pointed toward the direction of the nearest large city. And he's able to pick up, he said, 60 or so television stations. Now, that sounds like more than I would think, but you have to keep in mind digital television allows for more stations than used to exist, so that may very well be true. But he is able to get those TV channels, local broadcast, over-the-air TV channels, in the same way that you get radio stations when you sit in your car and turn on the radio, and you pick up AM or FM radio stations coming in on an antenna that's attached to your car. Originally, television was all black and white. Color television was established in 1953. Still, it took it, as it usually does, a number of years to really become fully established. So we did not have all color network programming until the mid-'60s. NBC kind of led the way with color TV, and they used to promote color TV with an animation that's kind of fun to watch. That the peacock there is still the NBC logo even today. But they used to promote the idea of color TV with this, and you would, NBC program would begin, and if you were watching in black and white, this is what you would see.
The following program is brought to you in living color on NBC.
And relatively few people had color televisions. Most people into the 60s, well into the 60s, had black and white TV, so you would kind of wonder, gee, what am I missing?
Brought to you in living color on NBC.
And this is what you were missing.
The following program is brought to you in living color on NBC.
And that still today is the NBC logo. And you might go to someone's home who had a color TV and see this in all its glory and think, wow, we really have to get a color television set. So that was really a brilliant way of promoting color TV. The big three networks, NBC, CBS, ABC, existed pretty much by themselves for decades. NBC and CBS had started as radio networks, which I think we've talked about, and then evolved into television. There still is a CBS radio network. And then NBC Radio had the NBC Red Network and the NBC Blue Network. I think we've talked about this. The FCC ordered NBC to sell off NBC Blue, and that became ABC, which of course is still a major television network. And but it has its roots in NBC. It started as part of NBC. There was a network called Dumont, but it was not really on an equal footing with NBC, CBS, and ABC. It lasted for about, I guess, 10 years, and then went off the air in the mid-1950s. Local television stations started coming on the air in the late 40s, and Channel 8 in Dallas was one of those, WFAA. And in 1999, WFAA had its 50th anniversary, and they produced a very nice program commemorating their golden anniversary, and the other stations did as well around the same time. But I'll show you just a moment or two of the beginning of the 50th anniversary Channel 8 WFAA program. If you're from Dallas, you might enjoy watching this whole thing.
Of WFAA, Dallas's first television station. Tonight we celebrate the past and look forward to an exciting future. Thank you so much for allowing us into your home and for watching Channel 8. Now it's my pleasure to welcome you as WFAA presents 50 Years of the Spirit of Texas.
Make this house destined for the education and entertainment of the multitudinous people in this metropolitan area.
Of course, if you're from Dallas and you go to downtown Dallas, you know that building
Education and entertainment of the multitudinous people in this
is still there, and Channel 8 still operates in that building. I know they've expanded it, and they probably have facilities elsewhere also, but this building is still very much part of downtown Dallas.
area.
We were learning that there was such a thing as local television that really meant something in the community.
You see the Dallas Morning News indicated there. The company that owned the Dallas Morning News, the Belo Company, also owned Channel 8 and put Channel 8 on the air.
See your power and glory through science, literature, and drama.
Just a really good group of I told you I'd get nostalgic.
All followers of thy example. Still those who shall speak from this station.
Man, I gave my life.
And what you're seeing there represented are some of the people who did locally produced original programs on Channel 8, and that used to be much more a part of television broadcasting than it is today, other than the local TV news. We used to have quite a few locally produced entertainment programs that unfortunately, I think, has sort of passed into history. But in the early days, you had a good deal of locally produced TV programs. So we'll leave it at that for now. We're going to get into some other aspects of the development of television, how things came to be the way they are today next time, and we'll see you then.